right, so my talk today is called, Why Does Changing Our Thinking Change Our Life? Why does it? Why does it? I used to think about that a lot. I remember the first time I ever heard the term thoughts are things. I had just enrolled in a massage school out in Riverside. It was the early 90s. And like I found my tribe out there, right? A bunch of new age people carrying their crystals around. I was just like, oh, I was so happy and excited. But I would hear like variations of thoughts or things, like energy flows where your attention goes. I heard that. Change your thinking, change your life. What you think about, you bring about. That was the one that confused me. Because I would think, well, I thought about $1 million, but I didn't get $1 million. Right? I thought about like a new Lamborghini, but I didn't get a Lamborghini. But then I joined Unity, and I heard this saying, which later on I heard Mary Morrissey saying too, but it's that we create everything twice. The first, we think of something in our imagination which plants a seed in divine mind, the pure substance that creates everything. And then it manifests into our physical life. And so how that might look is if somebody wants to move out of state. They may first imagine like what state would be fun to live in. They may think about it and mull it over, think about the weather, look online at some houses. And so they're working it out in their imagination first. But we even do this with little things. Like I did this every time I do a talk. I kind of lay it out in my imagination because I don't want to go down a rabbit hole that we can't get out of in 30 minutes, right? So I do that. So I think we've all used this. We all know that we've used this purposefully. We imagine something, we create something. However, I've also imagined things that didn't work out. I've imagined things that didn't come into being. Luckily, because sometimes I'm a worst case scenario person, so I'll think about the worst case scenario and then it doesn't pan out, so of course I'm happy about that. But I thought of other things that I wanted in my life that didn't pan out. Like 10 years ago, I did a lot of focusing, setting intentions, imagining that I was playing music in front of thousands of people. But that never panned out. On and off, like for the last few years, every time I go on social media and I see the Gentle Barn, I imagine what it would be like to have an animal sanctuary and have baby donkeys and cows and maybe a baby elephant, I don't know. So not all of our thoughts become things, they just don't. We know that not all of our thoughts become things. Yet, the two most probably famous, highly paid motivational speakers on this planet, Brendan Burchard and Tony Robbins, lay out entire programs based on this premise, that we can use our thinking to change our life. They say it works. People use their programs and say it works. Actors, Jim Carrey and Will Smith, they are very into new thought teachings, and you can go find them on YouTube talking about all the stuff we talk about. And Jim Carrey said that before he became famous, he would drive up into the Hollywood Hills every day after work and get into the feeling place where he felt the truth of receiving a check for $1 million to play the lead in a movie. And then eventually he did that. So people are doing this. People are saying, yes, this works. Changing your thinking does change your life. Thoughts are things. Energy goes where attention, or energy flows where attention goes. Change your thinking, change your life. But how does it do that? And that's what I really wanted to work out in my head. Now we might think that it's what we think about. And so if we think about $1 million, we'll get that $1 million. And this is why vision boards, doing visualization exercises, doing our affirmations, they all feel really good because while we're doing that, we already start to feel like we're making changes. But then, when we're done, if we go back to living our life the way we were before, we'll keep doing what we have always been doing, and we'll keep getting what we've always been getting. So it's not just about what we think about. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how there's actually two things. It's about how we think about what we think about, but also how we do what we do. how do we do what we do? Both of those are activity, and it comes down to a state of consciousness. Our state of consciousness is how we're thinking when we're not thinking about it. And we think, like most of the time we're kind of unconscious in our thinking. We just think how we think. We respond how we respond, or we react how we react. And then our activity, the things we do throughout the day, also do that. Consciousness is a way of looking at the world. It's where our current perception is. It's a way of thinking. Consciousness can be either expansive, or our consciousness can be contractive, like crushing. Now, we know, like in a state like victim consciousness, that feels bad. And victim consciousness is a contractive consciousness. We don't feel good things in the victim consciousness. The expansive consciousness, of course, feels good, and we can keep expanding when they're in that state. Now, in the Unity teachings, there's a really adorable kids book that talks about this, and it's called Little Me and the Great Me. And basically what the little me is our ego, which will always put us into victim consciousness. The great me is our I am, which will always put us into abundance consciousness. Right? So, and if somebody can explain it so a child can get it, I feel pretty good about reading it, right? You really have to have it, right? To explain something to a kid so they're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, we hit a milestone if we do that. Okay, so in the little me, they want things their way. They judge, they blame, they get defensive. They will experience conflict if they cannot have life their way, and they will have every excuse for why they didn't do something. They blame out here, right? Well, I didn't stay on my diet because my husband brought home ice cream. Oh, I couldn't get all my work done because the new season of Orange is the New Black is on Netflix, right? So it's always something out here that's the problem. The great me is when we are in alignment, we're in communion with our divine nature. When we're aligned with our divine nature, we act through our divine nature. So our activities are done with kindness and love and compassion, understanding. We have brighter ideas, right? We act on inspiration when we're in the great me. Now, victim consciousness will include less good. In fact, in victim consciousness, the good that we have will start to seep out of our life. And in victim consciousness, we always are blaming something out here on our unhappiness. Stop hitting my mic. Okay, so something out there is what made us unhappy. Okay, something out there is to blame. When I say abundance consciousness, when I say abundance, what I mean is our brightest good. Okay, our abundance is all the good that's in the package of our life, and in the package of our relationships, and all the good that's in the package of our physical body. Because that's what we're working with every day, right? The package of our life, our relationships, and our body. In abundance consciousness, it's an expansive consciousness that can keep including more good. More and more and more good. So we always can bring more good into our lives. We'll always perceive our experience through our divine nature, and we'll live our divinity. We'll do all of our activities through our divine nature. So we'll see opportunities, we'll have brilliant ideas, we'll have new experiences that we'll do something about instead of being afraid to act on it. And we know when we're in abundance consciousness or centered in our I am, we know that even those really hard times, we can get through those because we're calling forth the activity of spirit, even in the challenges and the obstacles. So we can go through any event or circumstance in one of two ways. We can go through as the little me, or we can go through as the great me. Same event, but we'll see it two different ways depending on our consciousness, our way of thinking, our way of looking at the world. Back in 2004, I don't know if you remember this, but on the Oprah Winfrey Show, remember she used to give away free stuff to her studio audience? Well, one day, she had almost 300 in her audience, and they all got a brand new Pontiac, something or other. Brand new car. Brand new car. Later, all of the audience found out that they had $6,000 to pay in federal and income taxes, or federal and state. $6,000. Now, her audience looked at this in one of two ways. Little me. Well, that's not fair. What kind of gift is that? Oprah should have to pay the $6,000. I'm not made of money. This is like Oprah's fault now that I'm getting this bill. That's how some of the people responded to that gift. Then we have the other people who come from the great me consciousness. Well, it is a $30,000 car that we got for $6,000. I mean, that's a deal, right? That is a deal. You can't just go on the lot and get that good of a deal. Some of them figured out that they could finance the $6,000, and they did that. Some of them had the money in savings, and they could just pay it straight out. Some of them, because they had an inner resourcefulness that they could tap into, because they were coming from their I am consciousness, they were so smart, they traded in that car on a less expensive model, and they still had a brand new car and didn't have to pay anything. Because our I am consciousness triggers inner resourcefulness. Right? We act on those ideas. We act on those bright ideas. So we're always experiencing our life in one of two ways. Right? If we're in victim consciousness, even the richest person, if they're in victim consciousness, won't enjoy the money. I know somebody who's a millionaire, and they're the poorest rich person I know. They blame the economy. They blame all their unhappiness on things that are out here, and they don't enjoy the money. They'll spend it and get temporary happiness from some new thing, but then they lose their happiness again. And that's what happens when we're in victim consciousness. No matter how much of good we have in our life, we're not going to enjoy it. And we're going to keep looking out here to make us happy. Now, if we're in our abundance consciousness, of course, we see opportunities, we listen to our guidance, we walk by faith. In abundance consciousness, we don't count on circumstances out here being a certain perfect way. We don't need something out here to be a certain way. Now, it's nice sometimes, yeah, but we don't need it. When we are coming from our great me, we don't need the world to fix our problems for us. We are triggering inner resourcefulness by being in our abundance consciousness. So the same event, two ways of looking at it. Now, the reason changing our thoughts changes our lives is because if we're walking in victim consciousness, we're walking by sight. We are limited by what we see as limitations in the world. We'll blame circumstances outside of ourselves for our unhappiness, and we will be the king or the queen of excuses. Like, I know when I've been in the little me, I have had like the best excuse for things, like the best. Nobody could be a better queen at excuses than me, I'm sure. I don't know, we can compare notes later if you want to. When we're walking in abundance consciousness, we're walking by faith. So we're using our spiritual senses. Right? We're not getting caught up in the idea that something out here can limit us, because we know the activity of spirit moves through everything, even those perceived obstacles. We have our inner resourcefulness is triggered and in full activity, because that is the activity of spirit. So if we want our thinking to change our life, we want to be in the great me more than we're in the little me. There are two things that we want to think about. Two things. How we think about what we think about. Now, if we perceive one obstacle as shutting us down, one obstacle making us fail, if we blame one thing outside of ourselves for our failure, we have just moved into little me consciousness. We're in victim mode if we do that. Now, what's interesting is that we may think that we have expansive thinking and like the package of our relationships, but we don't have expansive thinking in the package of our life or our physical body. But actually, the truth is if we are limited in the package of our life or the package of our relationships or the package of our physical body, we're limited in all of those packages. We just may not be seeing it. I remember years ago, I was having a conversation with an acquaintance, and we were both massage therapists in Redlands, and we got on our justification train about why we weren't making any money. But we were doing our calling, we were doing the thing we loved, but I was hearing a lot back then, if it's a spiritual thing, you can't charge for it. Even though I paid like thousands of dollars for my education, I'm not supposed to charge to do it, right? What I realized was that I was limited in my idea of how I made money, even though I thought I was expansive in how I did my calling. Now, I couldn't see it when I was there, when I was in the middle of it, but when I can look back on it now, I realized that I was actually not putting effort into creating a business because I didn't have faith I could do it. And I wasn't putting as much effort into my relationships as I could have been. And I was not putting as much effort into the physical package of my body as I could have been. Okay, so because I was limited in one area, I was limited in all areas. I just couldn't see it. If we're limited, we're walking by sight. Now, we cannot walk by sight and faith at the same time. We can only walk by sight or walk by faith. And we can go back and forth, but we cannot be in both of them at the same time. So this is about how we think about what we think about. Are we thinking with limitation? Are we thinking that it's too much effort? Are we thinking that we can't make something happen? Or do we have faith in that? Do we have faith in that? And it's also about how we do what we do in this life. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." When I first heard that one, and I was like, oh no. Oh no. When we want to use our thinking to change our life, we don't just look at how we're thinking about what we're thinking about. We also look at what are we willing to do. Because if we're changing our life, we're going to be doing something different. We have to become the person that lives that life. And that's going to take some effort because that person does things differently. On my first Sunday here, 78 days ago, I got up here, and I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I said, I've gone sugar and flour free. Right? I said that. Now, the reason I said that, I guess maybe there was part of me that wanted accountability, so I would stick to it this time around. But also, I wanted vitality. I wanted to ease the achiness in my joints. I wanted to move easier. I wanted to clear the brain fog that comes with the sugar and the flour. Right? I wanted to move into well-being. I wanted to feel better. Now, the Deanna that I was a year ago wanted the same thing, but she didn't do that. I actually am a different person than I was a year ago because I am doing something so different, something that I considered a lot of effort, something that is way outside of my comfort zone. I had to become someone different. But you know what? If you don't travel and you decide you want to travel, you will become a different person when you become a person who travels, right? If you want to go on hikes and you've never been hiking before, you will become a different person when you become a hiker. We're always becoming something different. We are all of us different than we were a year ago. But how? How are we different? How do we do what we do? How do we do this? How do we do this life? Do we keep our promises? Do the things we say we'll do? Do we keep our promises to ourselves? Those are easy to break because, I could have lied the first month I was here and said, I still have sugar and flour. And for the first few weeks, you wouldn't know. Right? Now there's some evidence that I've been doing it. But, we can lie about what we say we're going to do. We can. And who will know? Who would know? So it's easy to break our promises to ourselves. Are we willing to do what's needed? Because if we want to grow into that other person, it's going to take some effort. And effort's not a bad thing. It's not. It's a good thing. In the spiritual community, I hear this affirmation all the time. Let it be easy and effortless. And I used to actually love that affirmation, but you know what? Effort is not a bad thing. When we do something new in our physical body, it allows us to anchor the higher vibration in our emotional self and spiritual self. So everything takes effort. You all got up here today and dressed yourselves. Without me telling you what color to wear, you still dressed yourself. You drove down here, or you biked over here. I don't know how you got here. You flew. You took your flying saucer. Maybe you did that. Everything will take effort. Going out to dinner, you have to decide where you want to go and pick a place. That will take effort too. So effort's not a bad thing. When we change our thinking to change our life, we're also changing our daily activities. That's just part of it. That's part of us becoming the new expansive version of ourselves, the next brightest version of ourselves. But also we have to stop giving energy to things that hold us back. This is where sacrifice comes in. We're going to have to sacrifice those behaviors, keeping us from doing the thing that we want to do. Now for me, I'll tell you the big behavior I had to sacrifice was eating sugar and flour. But it was also how I looked at giving up sugar and flour. Because I can give up sugar and flour, but it's not pretty. And nobody likes being around me. So I had to stop doing the whole, well, giving up sugar and flour, that's not fair. Why can't I live on donuts and Cheetos like other people? Life hates me. The universe hates me. Why can't I have sugar? Well, that's not a very good way of approaching becoming the next brightest version of ourselves. And that's victim consciousness. Even if I'm doing the right activity, I went off sugar and flour. That's the right activity to start feeling better. But if I'm doing it as a victim, I will not be able to maintain that. We cannot maintain a right activity in a victim consciousness. We just can't. Now all of us have something new we would like to create in the package of our life or our relationships or our physical body. All of us have something new. And it could be a small thing, right? Like adding more play in or maybe meditating, okay? It could be a bigger thing, like moving out of the state. But all of us have something we want to do. So how are we thinking about what we think about? And how are we doing what we do? Are we basking in our excuses as to why we can't do something, right? Because those excuses, they'll keep us from having what we want to create in our lives. Or are we basking in those? Are we putting forth effort? Maybe we are. But are we putting forth the effort as a little me, complaining about it? Or as the great me? Okay, willing to focus on the prize, right? The desired outcome. Our nature is expansive. As a soul, we are designed to be expansive. So we will always have something that we want to transform in our lives or change, or we'll always have something in our life that we want to transcend. Not everything can be changed, right? But we can rise above things. There will always be that in our life because we would stop growing if we didn't have that. We are an expansive being. Okay, our soul is expansive. And we're using this body right now to have these experiences on this planet. Now, a while back, I injured my back. And it was a really hard thing for me to experience. I've never felt so bad. It was worse than childbirth. And I had 2 babies at home with a midwife. Okay, so it was worse than childbirth. Although I have to say I had really easy births, so that's a horrible comparison. They were so easy. But I was in so much pain and I couldn't move, right? I was stuck kind of hunched over. It was a low back psoas muscle thing. And for the first couple weeks, stuck in bed, I could just barely get up and walk to the bathroom. I was in victim consciousness. I could feel it and I knew it. But I was in so much pain. My conversation was, why me? This isn't fair. Why did this have to happen? My life is, all the fun stuff's passing me by. But I kept feeling terrible about that. And I knew I was in victim consciousness. So I thought, okay, I want to get into expansive consciousness. How am I going to do that? Well, at that point, it's like 2 weeks. I can sit on the edge of my bed. And I thought, okay, there's one thing I can do. And I can breathe deeply. There's something about breathing deeply that does trigger a physiological reaction in our body that helps us get a little better. I mean, I don't know how that works. That's science, and you could look that up. But breathing deeply does trigger a physiological reaction in our body. So I did that. Okay, so here's my consciousness, though. It was tiny, but it was expansive. Because I knew, I had faith that if I kept breathing deeply, that would lead to the next thing. I still couldn't get up and walk around much. But one day I found myself standing at the side of my bed, doing a little bit of this. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk to the front door. And I start doing that, walk from my room to the front door. And then I thought, breathing deeply, right? Trusting that will lead me to the next thing. And I thought, you know, it's beautiful outside. I could walk outside and sit in a patio chair, and I could get 10 minutes of sun on my head. 10 minutes of sun on our head. That's another thing that triggers a physiological reaction in our body that leads us toward well-being. So the one thing led to the next thing. Okay, now, of course, by then I'm like, then I can go to my chiropractor. I can get a massage. I can do that. Right? And here I am. But see, I'll tell you what didn't help. What didn't help was my prayer partner calling me up and saying, well, you know, you've been thinking negatively. You just have to find where that little negative thought is. Okay, that didn't help. Thinking happy platitudes. That didn't help. Change your thinking, change your life, Deanna. Okay, think about unicorns. Didn't work. Watching motivational speakers on YouTube. That didn't work. None of that stuff made me feel better. Navel gazing to figure out what I had done in a past life to cause this horrible feeling. That didn't work. Because I didn't have faith in any of that. What I had faith in was starting with the breathing. I was inspired to do that. And then I went out and got 10 minutes of sun on my head. The Apostle Paul said, faith without works is dead. We have to do a physical activity to anchor that energy into our lives. We can't just have faith and wait for the universe to do all the stuff. We have to do something too. What could I do, right? That was the thing I could do with faith. Now, I use healing as an example because our healing is the closest thing to us. Like if we get some kind of a health scare, it affects us on a deep level, right? The package of our life, the package of our relationships, of course, unless it's a loved one who's really suffering with an illness, right? Nothing hits home quite as much as our own health issues. And so that's why I use that example. How are we thinking about what we think about? And we're thinking about things all day long, not just our desired outcome, not just the feeling better. We're thinking about other things too. We're going to all drive in traffic later today. We're going to be thinking about that. Okay, we're going to be thinking about our lunch. We're going to be thinking about, you know, if we go shopping, we're going to be thinking about people out there in the world, at Sprouts, at Trader Joe's, doing whatever they do. We're going to have all kinds of thinking today. How are we thinking what we're thinking? Are we walking by faith? Are we walking by sight? How are we doing what we're doing? Because we're going to have to take some physical activity. We're going to have to do some physical effort in what we do. But how are we doing what we do? Are we trusting it? Do we have faith in what we're doing? Are we doing our very best with what we have right here and now? Right? That's in the 4 agreements. Always do your very best. And that's the first thing I thought of. Right here and right now. With whatever is going on, we can still do our best. Changing our thoughts, it does change our lives. It's in how we think and it's in how we do. We are changing our life. And we're always going to know if we're in the little me or the great me. We'll always know because little me feels terrible because that's not in alignment with our divine nature. Great me feels wonderful because it's in our divine programming to do that. We are designed for expansion. Okay, and remember, you're not just changing your life, you are becoming the next brightest version of yourself. So until next time, remember, you are the activity of spirit in a body. You are the heart and hands of spirit in this world. You are a soul designed for growth and goodness. In everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is. Thank you.